Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. In the Bible Bistro, we have lots of fun stuff going on. We've got the School of Wisdom podcast and Creek Road Baptist Pulpit, in addition to Daily Dose Radio, so I hope that you'll go out and check those out. You'll find them on Spreaker, on YouTube, and lots of other sites, Facebook, and so forth. It's also in the Twitter feed. You'll find them everywhere. Also, check out the webpage, my-dailydose.com. Lots of good stuff there as well. We're looking at verses 29 through 33 in Psalm 106 today. Now, you said yesterday that we had the sin in Numbers 14. They didn't go into the land. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They started back to Egypt, and they decided that wasn't going to work. They tried to take the land after the Lord had said, these folks are never going in. And then after he said that, they said, oh, okay, well, let's try to go in and take the land. So that's Numbers chapter 14. And the Lord overthrew them. He told them not to do it. They did it anyway. We have Numbers chapter 25, the sin of Baal Peor, sacrifices of the dead, and they're doing some very corrupt things there. Of course, all Baal worship involves a sexual element, so it's not just eating sacrifices of the dead, but they're also sinning against their own bodies by committing fornication. And so the result of that was recorded here in verse 29 through 31. And let me just read for you 29 through 33. Thus they provoked him to anger with their inventions, and the plague brake in upon them. Then stood up Phinehas and executed judgment, and so the plague was stayed. And that was counted unto him for righteousness unto all generations forevermore. They angered him also at the waters of strife, so that it went ill with Moses for their sakes, because they provoked his spirit, so that he spake unadvisedly with his lips. All right, we come to 29 through 33. 29, 30, and 31 all have to do with the result of the sin of Baal Peor, which is recorded for us in Numbers chapter 25. A plague happened. That was part of the result of their sin. And then we have 30 tells us about Phinehas, and that's found in Numbers 25, verse 7. Phinehas, one of the priests, stood up and executed judgment. That is, a man who had taken a Moabitess woman, and he just brazenly brought her into the camp, took her into his tent. Just like, who's going to stop me? You're not the boss of me. And well, Phinehas grabbed a javelin or a spear and said, well, I'll tell you who the boss of you is. It's the Lord. He went in and he impaled both of them to the ground. Phinehas does that. The plague is stayed because he stood up against the sin. So we have the sin in 28. We have the result in 29 through 31. And of course, we have the statement about Phinehas. It was counted unto him for righteousness because he stood up for the Lord when nobody else seemed to be standing up for the Lord in the camp. And then we have verse 32. They angered him also at the waters of strife. Now, this is Numbers chapter 20. So we go back in Numbers. Numbers chapter 20, verses 7 through 13. The waters of strife is when the Lord told Moses, take your staff in your hand, go out and speak to the rock, and the rock will give forth its water. And the people were thirsty, and they were murmuring, of course. And so Moses was just done. He was so done with those people. And it says in verse 33, it went ill with Moses, that's verse 32, verse 33, because they provoked his spirit, so that he spake unadvisedly with his lips. So instead of going out and just speaking to the rock like the Lord told him to, he went out and he basically cursed the people and then took his staff and struck the rock. The Lord didn't tell him to do that. And the Lord said to Moses, you haven't glorified me in the presence of these people. The fall of Moses and Aaron there in 32 and 33, we find that in Numbers chapter 20, is a result of sin. It's not a result of their sin, although they did sin. But what happens is the sin of the people provokes the sin of Moses, and it causes a problem for him. So now not only the people are being judged, but the leadership of the people are judged because of the people's sin. Eventually, sin will always affect others other than the folks who have committed it. Join me tomorrow. We're going to look at verses 34 through 38 on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.